Imagine a stage illuminated by candlelight, powerful voices echoing through a hall filled with nobles and artists. In 1607, in a small Italian town, a revolutionary work forever changed the history of music. But what led to the creation of opera? And why did it become one of the Renaissance's greatest artistic expressions? We find ourselves in the late 16th century, in Italy, the cradle of the Renaissance. This was a period of cultural renewal, where art, science, and philosophy flourished like never before. It was against this backdrop that a group of intellectuals and musicians decided to revive ancient Greek theatre, but with a modern twist: music. Thus, opera was born, a fusion of drama, poetry, and melody that would conquer the world. The story begins in Florence, where passionate debates about the power of music to move the human soul were taking place in lavish palaces. These thinkers believed that the ancient Greeks had achieved something magical by combining spoken word with musical accompaniment, a tradition lost for centuries that they were determined to rediscover. What's fascinating is that opera wasn't created to be popular entertainment. It was born from intellectual curiosity and artistic experimentation. These Renaissance pioneers couldn't have imagined that their creation would still captivate audiences worldwide more than 400 years later. If you love history and want to uncover the mysteries of great empires like this video, subscribe to the Modern Age Chronicles channel and don't miss a single episode. Join us as we journey through time to discover how a small circle of visionaries created an art form that continues to move us with its beauty and emotional power. In the twilight of the 16th century, Florence was buzzing with intellectual energy. Within the elegant walls of Count Giovanni de' Bardi's palace, something extraordinary was taking shape. A group of forward-thinking intellectuals and musicians, known as the Camerata Fiorentina, the Florentine Camerata, gathered regularly to discuss art, philosophy, and most importantly, music. These weren't casual meetings over wine and cheese. These were passionate debates about the very nature of art. The Camerata included some of the finest minds of their day: Vincenzo Galilei, father of the famous astronomer Galileo, poet Ottavio Rinuccini, and composers Jacopo Peri and Giulio Caccini. They shared a profound dissatisfaction with the complex polyphonic music of their time, where multiple melodic lines intertwined, often obscuring the words being sung. Their intellectual curiosity led them to obsess over ancient Greek drama. They believed the Greeks had discovered something magical, a way to enhance emotional expression by combining spoken word with musical accompaniment. But how exactly did it work? No one knew for certain. The actual music of ancient Greek theatre had been lost to time, leaving only descriptions and theories. The Camerata's solution was bold. They would reinvent this lost art form. They envisioned a style where music served the text, where each word could be clearly understood, and where melody could heighten the emotional impact of poetry. They called this new approach monody, a single vocal line with simple accompaniment, the very opposite of the elaborate polyphonic style that dominated their era. Did you know that the earliest operas were performed in private theatres, with singers wearing masks to represent their characters? These masks were not just decorative. They were essential tools that helped the audience identify characters in stories drawn from mythology. Even more surprising, female roles were typically performed by men, as women were forbidden from appearing on stage in public performances. Young men with high voices or specialized male singers called castrati would take on these feminine roles, a practice that continued well into the 18th century. The Camerata's experiments eventually led to what many consider the first true opera, Daphne, composed by Jacopo Peri in 1597. Sadly, most of this groundbreaking work has been lost to history, but their second attempt, Eurydice, performed in 1600 at the Pitti Palace to celebrate a royal wedding, has survived. This marked the birth of a new art form, where stories would be told entirely through song and recitative, a style of singing that mimicked natural speech patterns while adding musical elements. What's truly remarkable is how quickly this experimental art form, born from intellectual curiosity in a Florentine palace, would spread throughout Italy and eventually conquer the world. These visionaries couldn't possibly have imagined that their creation would still be captivating audiences more than 4 centuries later. While the Camerata Fiorentina laid the theoretical groundwork for opera, it was Claudio Monteverdi who transformed this experimental concept into something truly revolutionary. Monteverdi wasn't just any composer. He was a musical genius who stood at the crossroads between the Renaissance and Baroque periods, a visionary who would forever change the landscape of Western music. In 1607, in the northern Italian city of Mantua, Monteverdi presented L'Orfeo to the court of Duke Vincenzo Gonzaga. This wasn't just another musical experiment, it was the birth of what we now recognize as modern opera. The Duke spared no expense for this production, assembling the finest musicians and singers from across Italy. Court records show that the premiere was a spectacular affair, with elaborate costumes, stunning sets, and an orchestra of nearly 40 musicians, an unprecedented gathering of talent for that time. L'Orfeo tells the timeless story of Orpheus, the legendary musician from Greek mythology whose music could charm even the gods. When his beloved Eurydice dies from a snake bite, Orpheus journeys to the underworld to bring her back. His music so moves Hades, the god of the underworld, that he agrees to release Eurydice on one condition: Orpheus must not look back at her until they reach the world of the living. It's a tale of passionate love, tragic loss, and the transformative power of music, the perfect subject for this new art form. What made Monteverdi's work so revolutionary was how he used music to express human emotions with unprecedented depth and intensity. He invented a technique called stile concitato, the agitated style, using rapid repeated notes to convey excitement, anger, or fear. Before Monteverdi, music was primarily concerned with beauty and harmony, but he understood that music could express the full range of human emotions, from the tenderest love to the most profound grief. Few people know that Monteverdi was actually taking an enormous risk with L'Orfeo. He was already a respected composer of madrigals, but by creating an opera of this scale and emotional complexity, he was venturing into uncharted territory. Some musical conservatives considered his innovative techniques scandalous, even referring to them as musical heresies. But the Duke was a forward-thinking patron who encouraged Monteverdi's bold experimentation. One of the most striking moments in L'Orfeo comes when Orpheus learns of Eurydice's death. The music suddenly shifts from joyful celebration to devastating grief. Monteverdi creates this dramatic contrast by using different instrumental combinations and harmonic structures. This wasn't just clever compositional technique, it was a profound understanding of how music could mirror the human experience in all its complexity. The impact of L'Orfeo was immediate and far-reaching. It elevated opera from an intellectual curiosity to a powerful art form capable of moving audiences deeply. More than 400 years later, L'Orfeo is still performed in opera houses around the world, a testament to Monteverdi's genius and the timeless quality of his music. With this masterpiece, Monteverdi didn't just create entertainment. He proved that opera could be the highest form of artistic expression, combining music, drama, poetry, and visual spectacle in a way that speaks directly to the human soul. Following the groundbreaking success of L'Orfeo, opera spread like wildfire across Italy and eventually throughout Europe. What began as an experimental art form in the courts of nobility quickly captured the imagination of the broader public. By the mid-17th century, Venice alone boasted 7 opera houses, a testament to the genre's explosive popularity. The year 1637 marked a crucial turning point in opera history. The Teatro San Cassiano in Venice opened its doors as the world's first public opera house. This revolutionary development meant that opera was no longer exclusively for the nobility. Now, anyone who could afford a ticket could experience this thrilling new art form. Lines would form hours before performances, with nobles and wealthy merchants vying for the best seats, while the less affluent crowded into the standing room areas. Francesco Cavalli, once a singer in St. Mark's Basilica Choir and a student of Monteverdi, emerged as one of the leading opera composers of this new era. His opera La Callisto featured melodies so captivating that they would be sung in the streets of Venice for weeks after performances. Cavalli understood what the public wanted: beautiful melodies, dramatic stories, and spectacular staging. During his lifetime, he composed more than 40 operas, bringing the art form to unprecedented heights of popularity. A fascinating aspect of these early public operas was their timing. Unlike today's evening performances, operas during Carnival season in Venice would begin in the late afternoon and continue well into the night, often lasting 5 or 6 hours. Audience members would come and go, eat and drink, and even conduct business during performances. Opera houses were as much social venues as they were theatres, places to see and be seen. By the early 18th century, Antonio Vivaldi, better known today for his instrumental works like The Four Seasons, had become a prolific opera composer. What many don't realize is that Vivaldi composed nearly 50 operas, though many have been lost to time. His opera Orlando Furioso dazzled audiences with its virtuosic vocal writing and innovative orchestration. Vivaldi used the orchestra to create sound effects like storms and battles, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in musical storytelling. As opera spread beyond Italy to France, Germany, and England, it adapted to local tastes and traditions. In France, Jean-Baptiste Lully developed a distinctly French style that emphasized dance and spectacle. In England, Henry Purcell infused opera with English folk elements. Yet everywhere it went, opera maintained its fundamental power to move audiences through the marriage of music and drama. What made opera truly revolutionary was its ability to express the full range of human emotions. Through aria and recitative, composers could explore love, hate, jealousy, revenge, and redemption in ways that spoke directly to the human heart. Opera wasn't just entertainment. It was a mirror that reflected the deepest aspects of the human experience. So did you know that the earliest operas were performed exclusively in private theaters before becoming the public sensation we know today? If you're enjoying this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the Modern Age Chronicles channel for more incredible stories like this one. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's your favorite opera of all time? While opera dazzled audiences with its artistic brilliance, behind the curtains lurked a world of scandal, intrigue, and fierce competition that would rival the most dramatic plots performed on stage. The opera house was a battlefield where careers were made and destroyed overnight, and where the politics could be as treacherous as any royal court. The singers of the Baroque era weren't just performers, they were the superstars of their day. The most famous among them, particularly the castrati, commanded astronomical fees and enjoyed celebrity status that modern pop stars would recognize. Farinelli, perhaps the most celebrated castrato of all time, received lavish gifts from admirers, including diamond rings, gold snuff boxes, and even portraits painted by leading artists. His salary could be up to 5 times what the composer earned for writing the entire opera. These vocal superstars knew their worth and weren't afraid to throw spectacular tantrums to get their way. The famous soprano Francesca Cuzzoni was so difficult that when she refused to sing an aria written specially for her, the composer Handel grabbed her by the waist and threatened to throw her out of a window, shouting, "Madam, I know you are a true devil, but I will show you that I am Beelzebub, the chief of devils." Faced with Handel's fury, Cuzzoni wisely decided to sing the aria after all. Rivalries between singers could reach absurd proportions. In 1727, two leading sopranos, Faustina Bordoni and Francesca Cuzzoni, actually came to blows during a performance at the King's Theatre in London. As the audience watched in astonishment, the two divas pulled each other's hair and exchanged slaps while continuing to sing their parts. The scandal was so great that it was reported in newspapers across Europe and even inspired satirical pamphlets and cartoons. Composers weren't immune to these backstage battles either. They competed fiercely for commissions and patrons, often resorting to sabotage and intrigue. When a young composer named Nicola Porpora tried to establish himself in Venice, it's said that rivals paid hecklers to disrupt his opera's premiere. The tactic backfired when the public, outraged by this unfair treatment, embraced Porpora's work even more enthusiastically. The Teatro San Cassiano in Venice, as the first public opera house, witnessed some particularly colorful incidents. Unlike the strictly regulated court performances, public opera houses were raucous affairs where audience members freely expressed their opinions. They would shout "ancora" when they wanted an aria repeated, or "fuori" when they wanted a singer to leave the stage. Nobles would rent boxes for entire seasons, decorating them as they pleased and using them not just to watch the opera, but to conduct business, entertain guests, and even serve elaborate meals. These boxes became centers of intrigue, with their occupants sometimes more interested in who was visiting which box than in what was happening on stage. Love affairs blossomed, political alliances formed, and business deals were struck, all against the backdrop of the performance. Many boxes had curtains that could be drawn for privacy, leading to all manner of scandalous behavior. The financing of opera was equally dramatic. Impresarios who managed opera productions lived precarious lives. One successful season could make them wealthy, while one failure could land them in debtor's prison. The famous impresario Marco Faustini, who managed several Venetian theatres, once had to flee the city in the middle of the night to escape his creditors after a particularly disastrous season. Even the audiences participated in the drama. Opera fans in Naples and Venice formed passionate factions, supporting different singers or composers. These groups would attend performances armed with flowers to throw at their favorites and rotten vegetables for those they disliked. Clapping and booing were organized activities, with paid claques ensuring enthusiastic applause for certain performers regardless of their actual performance quality. The world behind the curtain was every bit as theatrical as the performances on stage, a realm where art, ambition, love, and rivalry created a drama that continues to fascinate us centuries later. Opera was never merely entertainment. It was a mirror held up to society, reflecting its values, conflicts, and contradictions. Behind the spectacular costumes and soaring arias lay profound explorations of human nature and pointed commentaries on the world in which they were created. In many ways, opera houses became the theatres of ideas, where the most pressing issues of the day could be examined through the safe distance of art. Monteverdi's final masterpiece, L'Incoronazione di Poppea, The Coronation of Poppea, composed in 1642, was revolutionary not just musically, but in its subject matter. Instead of focusing on gods and heroes, Monteverdi chose to tell the story of the Emperor Nero and his mistress Poppea, who schemes her way to becoming empress. What made this opera truly shocking was that, unlike traditional morality tales, virtue is punished while ambition and corruption triumph. The noble Seneca is forced to commit suicide. The faithful wife Ottavia is banished, and the manipulative Poppea achieves her goal of wearing the crown. Venetian audiences watching Poppea would have immediately recognized the parallels to their own society, where political power was often gained through intrigue rather than merit. The opera posed uncomfortable questions. Does virtue really lead to reward? Is power simply the prize for those willing to be ruthless enough to seize it? These questions weren't just relevant in the 17th century, they continue to resonate today. What few people realize is that operas like Poppaea were often funded by the very nobles whose corruption they subtly criticized. The aristocrats watching these performances might not have fully appreciated how the art they patronized was questioning the foundations of their privilege. Opera composers became masters of encoding social critique within beautiful music and classical stories, allowing messages to bypass censorship that would have been forbidden in other contexts. By the early 18th century, opera had evolved into two distinct forms that reflected different social values. Opera seria, or serious opera, dealt with noble themes and historical or mythological subjects. It reinforced the social order by depicting heroic rulers and virtuous aristocrats, often serving as propaganda for the ruling classes. In contrast, opera buffa, or comic opera, focused on ordinary people and contemporary situations, frequently mocking the pretensions of the upper classes and celebrating the cleverness of servants who outwit their masters. One of the most socially significant operas of this period was Giovanni Battista Pergolesi's La Serva Padrona, the servant turned mistress, first performed in 1733. This short comic opera tells the story of a clever maidservant who manipulates her elderly master into marrying her. On the surface, it's simply amusing entertainment, but beneath runs a current of social commentary about class relationships and the changing social order. It caused such a stir that it sparked a major intellectual debate in France known as the Querelle des Bouffons, quarrel of the comic actors, which was really an argument about national identity and social values disguised as a dispute about musical styles. The themes explored in early operas, love across social boundaries, the conflict between personal desire and public duty, the corrupting influence of power, remain at the heart of operatic storytelling. When Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro premiered in 1786, just 3 years before the French Revolution, its depiction of servants outsmarting their aristocratic masters reflected the revolutionary spirit stirring across Europe. The Austrian Emperor Joseph II had banned the original play by Beaumarchais for being too politically dangerous, yet somehow allowed the opera to be performed, not fully recognizing how Mozart's music amplified rather than diluted its revolutionary message. What makes these early operas so remarkable is how they managed to address controversial social and political issues while appearing to be mere entertainment. They created a space where audiences could contemplate challenging ideas about power, justice, and human relationships. When we watch these operas today, we're not just experiencing beautiful music and dramatic stories. We're connecting with the hopes, fears, and debates of societies that, despite the centuries that separate us, struggled with many of the same fundamental questions we face in our own time. The legacy of opera extends far beyond the ornate theatres of Italy and the courts of Europe. What began in the late 16th century as an experimental art form has flowered into one of humanity's most enduring cultural achievements, with roots that have spread into virtually every aspect of our artistic and cultural life. When you settle into your seat at a modern cinema, watching as the lights dim and the soundtrack swells to build emotional tension, you're experiencing a direct descendant of operatic techniques. The concept of using music to enhance storytelling, to make us feel love, fear, triumph, or heartbreak more deeply, was revolutionary when Monteverdi did it in L'Orfeo, and it remains the foundation of film scoring today. The dramatic leitmotifs in John Williams' Star Wars scores, which give musical identities to characters and concepts, draw directly from techniques that Richard Wagner developed in the 19th century, who himself was building on foundations laid by those first Italian opera composers. Mozart, perhaps the greatest musical genius in history, was profoundly influenced by the Italian opera tradition. His Don Giovanni, premiered in 1787, took the dramatic innovations of early Italian opera to new heights, blending comedy and tragedy in ways that still feel startlingly modern. What many don't realize is that Mozart studied Monteverdi's works intensely learning from the master how music could reveal character and express emotion with astonishing precision. In the 19th century, Giuseppe Verdi became the voice of Italian nationalism, writing operas that stirred patriotic feelings during Italy's struggle for independence and unification. His chorus, Va Pensiero, from the opera Nabucco, became an unofficial national anthem. The crowds at Verdi's funeral in 1901 spontaneously sang this chorus as his coffin passed through the streets of Milan. 28,000 people united in song to honor the composer who had given voice to their national identity. This is the power of opera, to transcend entertainment and become part of a people's collective soul. Richard Wagner took opera's potential for artistic fusion even further, developing what he called Gesamtkunstwerk, a total artwork combining music, poetry, drama, visual arts, and dance. His revolutionary approach to harmony and orchestration changed music forever, influencing not just future composers, but painters, writers, and philosophers as well. When you visit his purpose-built theater in Bayreuth, Germany, you're entering a space designed specifically to realize his operatic vision, a temple to the transcendent power of music drama that still hosts an annual festival attracting visitors from around the world. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of opera's legacy is how works created centuries ago continue to speak to us today. When L'Orfeo is performed in the 21st century, audiences are moved by the same emotional truths that touched listeners in 1607. Modern productions may update the settings or interpretations, but the essential human experiences, love, loss, ambition, redemption, remain as relevant as ever. Opera has also demonstrated remarkable adaptability. From the grand productions at the Metropolitan Opera in New York to experimental performances in abandoned factories, from traditional stagings to radical reinterpretations, opera continues to reinvent itself while honoring its origins. The recent trend of broadcasting live opera performances in movie theaters has introduced this art form to new audiences who might never have entered an opera house. What's particularly fascinating is how opera has influenced popular culture in ways we often don't recognize. The vocal techniques developed for opera singers, requiring them to project their voices without amplification over an orchestra in a large theater, laid the groundwork for all Western vocal training. Even rock stars like Freddie Mercury of Queen drew on operatic techniques and inspirations. Mercury's collaboration with opera star Montserrat Caballé for the song Barcelona is just one example of opera's continuing cross-pollination with popular music. The legacy of those first Italian operas lives on in unexpected places, in film scores and Broadway musicals, in music videos and virtual reality experiences. What Monteverdi and his contemporaries created wasn't just a new form of entertainment. It was a new way of using art to explore what it means to be human. 400 years later, that exploration continues, proving that true art isn't bound by time or place. It speaks eternal truths in a voice that each new generation can hear and understand. The invention of opera in Italy was far more than just a cultural milestone. It was an artistic revolution that united music, theater, and raw emotion in ways never before imagined. What began in the candlelit palaces of Florence as an intellectual experiment transformed into one of history's most powerful and enduring art forms. Through the genius of composers like Monteverdi, opera became a mirror that reflected our deepest human experiences: love and loss, triumph and tragedy, power and vulnerability. 400 years later, these works still move us to tears, still make our hearts race, still connect us across centuries to the universal emotions we all share. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever experienced a piece of music that sent shivers down your spine, or watched a performance that moved you so deeply you couldn't speak afterward? This is the transformative power that those Renaissance visionaries tapped into when they created opera, a power that continues to enhance our lives today in everything from films to modern musicals. What's truly remarkable is how something so innovative could emerge from looking backward. Those Florentine intellectuals were obsessed with recreating the lost traditions of ancient Greece, yet in their quest to revive the past, they inadvertently created something entirely new. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most revolutionary ideas come from reinterpreting tradition rather than rejecting it. And so, the legacy of Italian opera extends far beyond the ornate theatres of Venice and the courts of Mantua. When we allow ourselves to be swept away by powerful voices and stirring melodies, we're participating in a tradition that has enriched human experience for over 4 centuries. A tradition that invites us to feel more deeply, think more profoundly, and connect more authentically with our own humanity. If you've enjoyed this journey through the birth of opera, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends who appreciate art and history, and subscribe to the Modern Age Chronicles channel. By doing so, you'll join us for more fascinating explorations of the modern age, a time when human creativity flourished and innovations emerged that still shape our world today. What do you think? Has this story of opera's birth changed how you view this art form? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and perhaps let us know which opera you'd most love to experience live. Until our next historical adventure, thank you for watching.